My name is Martin, and this is my colleague down here, Himanshu. And today we wanted to talk with you about taking virtualization to the next level with vSphere with Operations Management. This is the disclaimer that you'll probably see many times throughout the week. It's basically what you can and cannot do with the presentation, as well as other legal jargon. So today we wanted to start off by kind of setting the context and also talking about the market perspective. Then I'll dive into what's new with vSphere and also with Update 1. And then Himanshu will take over from there, and then he'll kick it up a notch and take it to the next level with Operations Management. He'll show you how to utilize Operations Management to take vSphere to that next level. Then we will cover some proof points and some customer successes, and then we'll wrap up with some next steps as well as some Q&A. So quick question, how many of you have an environment that looks similar to this, by show of hands, where the business expectations is outgrowing the ability of IT to deliver? Okay, quite a good number of you. And also, how many of you have flat or declining budgets this year? Okay, and even bigger hand, I think that's a common problem, right? Well, I want to welcome you all to the new reality of the mobile cloud era. With more users and more endpoints and more data than ever before, there's a widening gap between business expectations and the ability of IT to deliver. And simply put, the management tools that we use today just aren't good enough anymore. It's not sufficient for what we want to accomplish in this new mobile cloud era. Innovation is the key, and when we know this, and we also know that we have to free up resources and shift those resources from projects that are for maintenance to projects that are for innovation, to drive the innovation. We basically need a game-changing technology to kind of bridge this gap and deliver IT at the speed of business. Now, that game-changing technology can be VMware's One Cloud Any Application architecture powered by the software-defined data center. For those who aren't familiar with the software-defined data center, it's basically a data center where all infrastructure is virtualized and delivered as a service, and control of the data center is fully automated with software. And at the foundation of the software-defined data center is vSphere with Operations Management.
Hi, everybody. So as Martin kind of introduced me, my name is Himanshu Singh. I do product marketing for VMware's operations management portfolio. Martin focuses more on the vSphere side of things, and I'm the operations management guy. So as Martin kind of started talking about the whole shift in terms of the landscape, right? Business demands are outpacing what IT can deliver. So there's a problem, but you can also think of it as an opportunity. So there is this opportunity for IT to transform into the new IT that can actually deliver what the business wants and become a partner to the business. So there's kind of three aspects to this transformative opportunity that we talk about, right? IT needs to be able to provide solutions at the speed the business operates, right? Now, the speed of IT, the speed the business requires us to deliver. So you're able to quickly provision resources, you're able to quickly deliver applications and support the business needs, right? The other aspect of it is about being able to move from being reactive and solving problems to actually being proactive and avoiding problems, right? And so you want to make sure that you're focusing on things like performance and availability of your infrastructure and your applications, etc. And the next step, or the kind of holy grail, is all about becoming a strategic partner to the business. So not just being a cost center, right? There's a lot of people who identified with the whole, budgets being flat and being reduced, right? So not being a cost center anymore, but being a strategic partner to the business. So you're delivering value to the business, you're delivering differentiation. So you're actually not just focused on operational efficiency, but actually being able to support the business transform itself, right? And grow that way. So this is kind of the opportunity that's available. How do we break that down into what's needed to fuel that opportunity? Right? The first part is all about kind of matching that speed of the business. And what you need there is to start with the infrastructure itself that is designed to be able to support the new environment of hybrid cloud, of the mobile cloud era, as Martin was talking about earlier, right? On top of that, you need to be able to have a tool that provides you consistent management so that you can manage your entire environment from one view. What you also need to look at is to optimize the efficiency and productivity of IT itself, both in terms of people and resources. The other thing is about moving from being reactive to proactive, right? And you have to think about that in terms of being able to look at the performance of your applications and infrastructure and how do you improve that, right? And then moving on to things like using tools that are not just giving you symptomatic alerts, telling you what's up, what's down, but actually giving you meaningful insights that help you solve that problem faster. And you also want to make sure that you're getting better visibility into the dependency of applications to the infrastructure underlying it. And we'll get into more about that in a minute as well. The third aspect we talked about was becoming that strategic partner to the business. And what that means is you have to move from doing repetitive manual tasks to instead safely automate. And I say safely automate because automation is great because it improves efficiency, but at the same time, you need to make sure that IT is in control, right? You don't want tools that are just running willy-nilly by itself. You want the tool to be able to automate and help you, but at the same time, you as IT need to stay in control because you know your environment best. The other thing also is in order to support availability of those applications, those mission-critical applications, etc., you need to have workloads optimized and balanced across your environment, and we'll get into that as well. And lastly, it's all about making sure that the environment you have is standardized. If you're looking at things like compliance issues and those kind of things, that you're taking care of those, security hardening, etc., that you're taking care of those as well. So you're running a tight ship. All right. So that's kind of how that's kind of your wish list of how do you make use of this opportunity, and what are the tools that you need, the fuel that's going to power this transformation. So let's switch back and look at what's the actual reality in data centers right now. Before we get into that, a quick show of hands. How many of you are in a virtualization infrastructure administration capacity? Oh, yeah. Storage administration. You guys, I have a lot of sympathies for you guys because we'll get into that in a second. Network administration. We'll talk about you as well. Okay, so here's the thing, right? You've got different teams, you've got different tools, everybody has their monitoring tools, etc., and all this is generating a bunch of data, right? And sometimes all this monitoring data gets too much. So you start ignoring things. There's just not enough time to get to everything, all that different alerts that are coming in. When there is an actual problem, you get an alert storm. What it is a bunch of these symptoms. This is up, this is down, this is red, this is green, this is 90%, this is 70%. Doesn't have any intelligence built into it. Doesn't tell you what is the underlying problem. So everybody's looking at their own screens, their own tools, and pointing fingers. So the network guy goes away because you can't trace that packet anymore. The storage guy gets blamed because everything is stored for eternity, right? And all the evidence is right there. So now what's happening is all these different teams are pointing fingers at each other. At the same time, the business is suffering. The end users are still complaining, they're on your case, and you're trying to basically get this problem go away. Not necessarily solve the issue, just make it go away. So you do what you've learned from managing physical resources, which is, if I have enough resources, I'm not going to have a problem, right? Well, so you over-provision. And when you over-provision, you basically defeat the whole point of going to virtualization in the first, and that just perpetuates this whole vicious cycle. So we need a solution that breaks that cycle. And from VMware, the solution we have is called vSphere with Operations Management. So it brings together the, that trustworthy, trusted, market-leading virtualization platform with the management solution that provides consistent operations management across your infrastructure. And so vSphere with Operations Management essentially is just a combination of two components, vSphere and vRealize Operations. So now we talk about these two components and the makeup of it. Let's start with talking about vSphere, and we'll have Martin back up again.
Okay, show of hands again. Who does not use vSphere? I don't want to see any hands here. Everyone should be using vSphere, right? Good. Now, who's actually using vSphere 6 now? We launched vSphere 6 back in March. Got excited in the middle. I'm happy for you. So we launched vSphere 6 back in March. And really, when we launched vSphere, we wanted it to be the platform for any application. And we focused on 3 core pillars of innovation that revolved around scale and performance, breakthrough availability, and then a simplified data center management experience. And I'll dive into each of these as we progress. So vSphere really is the platform for any application, and that includes scale-up application, including your traditional business-critical applications like Oracle and SAP and Microsoft Exchange, et cetera. These applications can be very resource-intensive in nature, can be very large. And the other end of the spectrum, we also support scale-out applications, things like your cloud, mobile, social, and big data applications that are more distributed in nature. Across the board with vSphere 6, we actually increase scale 2x, 3x, and 4x times compared to vSphere 5.5. The one exception, of course, is CPUs per host. It's just that we couldn't find a server that's larger than 480 CPUs. If you guys know one, let me know. I couldn't find one. But still, relatively big scale, and we've shown that we're able to virtualize even the largest applications. We also focus on specific use cases, and one such use case is desktop virtualization or VDI. Now, if you use desktop virtualization, you'll know that the experience with it can be at times suboptimal. If you use very graphic-intensive applications like CAD, or you do data modeling or anything like that, the screen can be very clunky. If you type something, if you do a mouse movement or something, the screen takes time to catch up, and that's a very suboptimal experience. In vSphere 6, we actually partnered with NVIDIA to deliver what's called NVIDIA Grid vGPU. And what that gives VDI users is basically superior 2D and 3D performance. This really is like night and day. On the one hand, without this feature, you have sluggish screens. On the other hand, you have a huge amount of responsiveness in the screen. It's almost as if the server were in the same room with you and you weren't connecting over the internet, right? So huge improvements in terms of graphics there. Did anyone watch the keynote this morning? We made announcements around containers and stuff like that. And a huge part of that is instant clone, right? So we talked earlier about scale-out applications and how they have different characteristics than scale-up applications. Scale-out applications, need to expand. The nodes need to be deployed quickly. The clusters need to grow fast. And Instant Clone helps with this, right? Instant Clone literally allows you to have virtual machines, to deploy thousands of virtual machines in a matter of minutes as opposed to hours compared to what was there before. And then this technology is now adopted in vSphere integrated containers as well as things like big data extensions and also our Horizon portfolio. So huge capabilities there in terms of being able to expand. Now, scale and performance is great, but it's only as good if the application's up and running. So in this release, we also focus a lot on availability and redefining what it means to be available. One of the most popular features of vSphere is VMotion, and we introduced this feature a long time ago, and when we first introduced it, it kind of blew the industry away in terms of what was possible with availability. But we didn't rest on our laurels, and we kept pushing the limits of what was possible with vMotion. In vSphere 6, what we did was we extended the boundaries of vMotion to extend across virtual switches, to extend across vCenter servers, and to even, now you're able to do a vMotion over long distances of up to 150 milliseconds round trip time. To put that into perspective, what you can do now is you can actually have a data center in New York City and a data center in London actually do a vMotion across those two cities, across continents. So huge in terms of what you can do in terms of use cases. Now you can have data centers far apart and still satisfy disaster avoidance requirements. Say you had a data center in San Francisco and a data center in Miami, and you knew a hurricane was coming on the East Coast. You could quickly vMotion all those workloads to the San Francisco data center and basically keep those applications up and running even during the hurricane. So disaster avoidance, continuous availability, so huge there. So long distance vMotion is great when you have planned downtime, when you know things are probably going to go down. But what about unplanned downtime, right? That's exactly what fault tolerance is for. Fault tolerance basically saves your workloads in the cases where you have server failures or hardware failures, where basically with fault tolerance, what's happening is that you have two virtual machines, one running on each running on separate servers, and they're running in lockstep. So if one goes down, the second one picks up right where it is. Now, fault tolerance isn't anything new. In fact, it was in vSphere 5.5. But what's great about vSphere 6 is that fault tolerance is now supported for multi-processors of up to 4 virtual CPUs. That's a huge improvement of what was there before. We actually did a study, and we found that 4 virtual CPUs for workloads meant that 93% of workloads were now supported and could be supported with fault tolerance. So huge in terms of continuous availability for your unplanned downtime. And then kind of the last pillar that I want to talk about is simplifying your data center management. We all like performance, we all like availability, but we also all want a simplified way to manage our data centers. As companies grow in size and complexity, managing the data center gets very complicated. And VMware sees this, and we want to do something to simplify it. So we offer many features that help you simplify your data center management. The first I want to talk about is Content Library. Content Library basically gives you a simple and efficient way to manage your data center content. What it does, it enables, Content Library enables your content to be stored and managed from a central repository. And then the second thing it allows you to do is you can now share the content, right? You can share it across clusters. You can share it across servers on different vCenters. So huge in terms of being able to coordinate across clusters with your resources. And then it uses a publish and subscribe model, so very simple. One of the VMs would basically share the content, and then the other VMs will basically subscribe to it, and then they'll be in sync. There's options with how you can sync it. And then the last thing you can do with Content Library is you can deploy your VMs from the VM template, or you can deploy your content directly from the Content Library. So huge time savings in the way that you would deploy and consume your resources. The web client. I know this is everyone's favorite feature, especially vSphere 5.5. But believe me, we heard the feedback from folks, and we heard how unhappy they were in terms of performance, in terms of intuitiveness to use the stuff. And we spent many extra resources to make sure that this time around it was done much better. In fact, we identified over 100 areas where performance and responsiveness needed to be improved, usability needed to be improved, and we worked endlessly to make that happen. Across the board for those 100 features or so, 100 areas or so, we made sure that things were just more responsive now. Things were more intuitive, where you would expect a menu to be where it is. If you wanted to get from point A to point B, it would take less clicks. And just something as simple as bringing up a menu wouldn't take seconds now, right? It would literally take microseconds. So very quick, very responsive now. And so far the feedback's been great. If you haven't given web client a second try, please do, because it's much improved from what you know. And then finally, the last area that I wanted to cover was vCenter Server, specifically the vCenter Server appliance. A lot of people are familiar with the Windows install vCenter. We also have the vCenter Server appliance now. It's not that necessarily one is better than the other, but now you have choice in how to deploy your vCenter servers. They are on par with each other in terms of scale, in terms of supported database. So again, it's not whether one is better than the other, it's that you have choice. And it makes management that much easier, because if you like the Windows install, go with the Windows. If you like the vCenter Server appliance model, go with that model. It's just much easier now. And we took a pulse of how the adoption of vSphere 6 was going, and we found that it was actually going very well. We saw that 30% of our customers in less than 2 quarters, in less than 6 months, have already moved on to vSphere 6. And by show of hands earlier, you guys are about 30% of the crowds raised their hands. And then the 91% of the audience, or 91% of our response had indicated that they would update within 1 year. And then feature-wise, we asked the customers, what feature did they find the most value in? And those features that I mentioned earlier, those are really the ones that resonates with the customers. They open up new use cases. They make life much simpler. So vSphere 6 is on track to be a very strong release for VMware. So if you haven't tried it yet, I think now's the time. And now, especially the time since vSphere 6 Update 1 is on the way. It's going to be here in Q3. In vSphere 6, we spent a lot of time making it good, and then in vSphere 6 Update 1, we made it even better. That's where all the fit and finish and the polish is there now. We actually got very little bug reported. People were generally very happy, but the few bugs that did come up, we actually did address. And then we also worked with our customers to make sure that the features that needed the polish would get the polish. So in vSphere 6, it's more secure now, it's more stable, And also, we focus on areas like vCenter Server Appliance to make the install and the update and the upgrade process that much better. With the web client, as I mentioned before, this is going to be, for the most part, your everyday interface in the future. So we knew it was important. We made things like the update manager support there. And again, we continue to work on performance to make it more usable. Just a little other thing. We worked on the host evacuation time and also the certificate of authority. But the main point is that vSphere 6 Update 1 is now here. And if you guys haven't updated yet, now is definitely the time. I know a lot of technology people don't like using the .0 version of anything. Now is the time because the first update is here, and we've shown that it's proven in production, it's stable, it's secure, and it's ready for prime time. I'll hand it back to Himanshu.
Thanks, man. All right, let's talk about operations management. But before we get there, instead of a show of hands, this time I'm going to ask you to stand up. And the question is, who's had lunch? Everybody who's had lunch, please stand up. Because I'm getting all, sleepy sitting over there. All right. That makes a little bit of difference. Please sit back down. Thank you for humoring me with that. All right, now that everybody's woken up, let's talk about the technology aspect of operations management. So we talked about the landscape. We talked about the what you need to do in terms of IT transformation, etc. Let's talk about from a core technology perspective. If you think about operational analytics, there's 5 main areas you got to think about. You have to start with things like performance and availability. That's basically the basic starting point. You have to think about making sure that the capacity in your environment is being used optimally. You're optimizing the resources that you have, right? Both from people and things. Then you have to also think about configuration health, making sure that your compliance standards are being met, etc. And when you look at the overall topology of your environment, you have to look at it in one single view, right? So when you do the analysis, you have to make sure that you are looking at everything as a whole instead of piecemeal. And the last and final one is actually pretty important because a lot of teams do not spend enough resources and time in this area, and that is unstructured data, all the logs that you have in your environment. Typically what happens is there's a bunch of insights that are embedded in these logs and unstructured data, and you don't make the best use of it, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, I mentioned vRealize Operations as the operations management component. How many of you have used vRealize Operations? Show of hands, please. That's a good number, nice. How many of you have at least heard of it? 80%? That's pretty good. That's way more than I normally get. So you guys have been reading up. So when we talk about vRealize Operations, there's a few things that really stand out, and a couple of them are self-learning and predictive analytics. Self-learning is all about understanding your environment, understanding what's normal for you, because it's different from every other company. It's different from every other deployment, right? So it's not a peanut butter approach. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's customized to what's going on in your environment, what's normal for you. The other side of the thing is predictive analytics. And the way it kind of works is looks at all the historical data that you have in your environment. Of course, it gives you, figures out what are the areas of stress, where you can gain some efficiencies, etc. It also looks at what's happening currently, all the real live events. It'll give you, guidance in terms of how we can automate certain things, and while staying in control, and improve efficiency in terms of workflows, etc. And also, it looks at predicted behavior from then on, right? So it learns your environment, and based on past and present usage patterns, it has a prediction of what is likely going to be. So if it sees things going downhill, it's going to alert you, and we'll get into that in just a second. The other thing also is that if you have a project coming down the line, 3 months later there's a big project coming in, you can factor that in now, so that when it's doing any kind of capacity calculations and those kind of things, it is taking those things into account. So you know exactly what's going to happen in the environment. You can reduce the risk by adding information up front. So this is what the typical UI looks like when you log into vRealize Operations. As many of you know, it's definitely different from the 5.x, 6.0, and 6.1 that's coming out. It's definitely different and improved. So on the left pane, you typically see that kind of an infrastructure inventory of your entire environment, whatever you've got connected to vRealize operations. And then you've got these three kind of columns of health, risk, and efficiency. Health is all about immediate problems. What's wrong right now that you need to look at? And the way we do that is by looking at something called smart alerts. And I'll just get into that. The middle column is about emerging issues. That's the risk column, which tells you what am I going to run out of next, right? What is the constraining factor that's going to not let me add on that next project or support that next application? And the third column is efficiency, which is giving you opportunities to optimize, right? Are there resources that are lying idle and unused that you can actually use for projects, etc. And the smart alerts I mentioned, they show up in the health column because they are all about what's wrong now, what do you need to fix now. And the idea there is that you look at, and if you click on one of the smart alerts, this is the typical view you'd see. And the idea there is it looks at a bunch of different symptoms, right? This is up, this is down, this is red, this is green, 80%, 50%, whatever, and figures out what is actually the problem, right? Not just symptoms, an actual underlying issue, and it identifies that, it tells you that up front. Of course, it also tells you what underlying issues are causing that problem, right? It takes into factor all the different metrics that it is collecting, so it's not siloed information, it's basically looking at everything as a whole. And then it gives you a recommendation of what you can do to solve that problem, right? More than the recommendation, it gives you a button to click that you can click the button and the problem is basically gone. So there is automation in terms of improving efficiency, but at the same time, you're in control. It's not a tool that's just going on its own, making changes without letting you roll it back or without you knowing. It's always asking for permission all the time, but it's making things simpler for you while you are in control. The next thing I want to show you is kind of related to that middle column of risk. This is about the capacity analytics, and in this case, it's giving you that if you see that the red octagon is basically what we call as a badge score, and it basically in this case it is red. It is always driven by, as I said, the resource that is the most constrained. So it looks like here you're running out of CPU and memory, and it gives you all the details of granular breakdown of all the different components and all the different metrics and what it's looking at, right? Now, the other thing was about efficiency, right? So here's the view that you can look at when you're trying to identify over-provisioned resources. So if you may have the line of business team come to you, oh, I need these many VMs with this configuration, and this is a big project, etc., etc. Month down the line, everybody's forgotten what's been provisioned, what's being used, was the VM that was supposed to have 9 vCPUs actually require 9 vCPUs, right? So this is where you can identify all the resources that are lying idle, lying over provision, that you can actually reclaim. So when that new project comes along, you don't have to go back and requisition for new hardware. You know already that you can actually serve that project based on existing resources that you already have. So you end up saving a bunch of capital expenditure that way. And so it's giving you that information about what you can reclaim. It's also right from that menu, you can do that single click to actually reclaim those resources. So it's again, you're in control, you're informed, it's asking for permission all the time, but it's making things simpler and easier for you. So we talked about some of the very, very simple top level kind of capabilities and of vRealize operations. With vSphere for Operations Management, vSOM, what you get is vRealize Operations Standard. And what we also have available as an add-on is something called vROI, vRealize Operations Insight. And what it is it upgrades your operations, your vRealize operations from standard to advanced. So you can manage not just vSphere, but actually everything else in your environment. And it also adds on something called vRealize Log Insight, which is a log aggregation and analysis tool. And this relates to the unstructured data that I was talking about earlier. So think about this, right? You've got a typical environment, infrastructure, virtualization layer on top, a bunch of applications running. All this is generating a ton of data, right? And all that data can be characterized into structured and unstructured. Structured data, things like metrics, KPIs, alerts, etc., is where vRealize Operations comes in. Takes all that in, does the capacity management, performance management, configuration, compliance, etc. for you, right? On the other hand, you've got the unstructured data, logs and messages, which is messy, not organized, and this is where vRealize Log Insight comes in. Actually, with a single click, it converts all the unstructured data into structured data. So you can actually query on all that and actually do a bunch of analysis. So it's the typical your log analytics search aggregation tool. And the great thing is that these two kind of work very well together. So if you're in Log Insight, you could be looking at a particular object and you might think, you know what, I need to configure this particular alert. Whenever this thing happens, I need to make sure that there's an alert. And you can actually send that alert to vRealize Operations. So you're back to looking at a single screen, right? So when you connect it to vRealize Operations, it gets all the metrics from a variety of sources. So it's still that one source of truth that you can kind of look at, right? Now, if you are in vRealize Operations, on the other hand, you could be, let's say you clicked on a smart alert, you're trying to figure out, you're trying to solve the problem, you look at a particular object, let's say a VM. You can, right from there, you can do a quick right click and open Log Insight in context, and then you can see all the logs for that particular object, and then you can do querying or searches. So you can quickly go from identifying a problem to finding that needle in the haystack to really solve the problem very fast. So you're using all the data and all the insights that are available to you, and you're not ignoring all that unstructured data. And as I said, it's an add-on bundle for vSOM, right? So here's a quick look on what Log Insight looks like. It's got two kind of views. This is the dashboard view. The other one is called Interactive Analytics view. And the dashboard view is basically a bunch of charts, graphs, etc. And to give you the information that you need to look at, you visualize. And as you can see, it's a simple, clean, very modern interface, very easily configurable, very flexible. You can share things, within teams and with the different team members and all that good stuff as well. Excuse me. Typically, a collection of these charts and graphs is what we call a content pack for Log Insight. And basically the idea behind a content pack is that you've got a bunch of subject matter experts who will take a look at that technology and say, you know what, for this technology, these are the kind of things that we need to manage and monitor, and they'll create that content pack for you. So with Log Insight, it actually ships with the vSphere content pack pre-built. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel. VMware has kind of done that for you, and you can similarly get content packs for a variety of VMware and non-VMware technologies, and that's all available through VMware Solution Exchange. The other view is the interactive analytics view. This is where all the logs, etc., will show up, and you can do queries on top of them. You can see trends and figure out where that spike might be, etc., and do some troubleshooting. Now let's get back to the vRealize Operations. Once you've kind of moved to vROI and have the advanced capabilities of vRealize Operations, you can do things like compliance monitoring, continuous compliance monitoring and enforcement. So it'll give you the compliance score, what's compliant, what's non-compliant, and in this case I think it's the PCI example. And right from that menu, you can just do that single click, open up Configuration Manager. That essentially will list out what the issue is, and right from there, you can actually take action and make things compliant again. So again, all about making things easier for you, but making sure that you're in control. The other thing I want to talk about is the aspect of application dependency, which I mentioned earlier, right? So you've got the inventory of your infrastructure, and then you've got a bunch of applications that are supported by that infrastructure. You want to make sure that you understand what application is dependent on what piece of infrastructure, because when things move, you know what application gets affected. Because again, this kind of information is very valuable, especially over time, or when you have something like a disaster scenario. Right? When you're trying to recover from disasters, it is very critical to understand that dependency, so you can recreate your environment much faster. Right? So if you have a problem, you can quickly recover, and if you proactively know about it, you can make sure that you avoid problems. The other interesting thing also here is the ability to create customized dashboards. So, we talked about the different teams having different views. What you can do with vRealize Operations advanced capabilities in this case is that you can create specific dashboards for different teams. So, something for a storage team, for a network team, for an application team, for example, so that they look at the view that they really care about, right? They have access to the tool, but they don't have to get bothered with everything. They look at what they care about. At the same time, everybody is using that single source of truth. So when you have a problem, it's much faster to solve that problem. And it's all about making sure that you're managing infrastructure aligned with the needs of the business, right? So you can prioritize all the business critical workloads compared to non-production, for example. All right, so I just want to give you a quick snapshot of what it looks like in terms of capabilities when you add on, right? So you've got your typical vSphere, you add the vRealize Operations Standard, that's your vSphere with Operations Management, enabling you to manage vSphere. You add on vROI on top, vRealize Ops Insight, so that changes your vRealize Operations from standard to advanced and gives you log analytics capabilities as we talked about just now. So I mentioned the difference being between standard and advanced, between base vSOM versus with vROI. It was all about your ability to manage your entire infrastructure now. And so of course you've got more than VMware in your environment. You've got Cisco, you've got HP, you've got Dell, you've got all sorts of interesting stuff happening over there. So what we have is something called management packs. I talked about content packs for Log Insight. For vRealize Operations, we call it management packs. And basically these are extensions that let you manage whatever else you have in your data center, and everything gets managed as the first-class citizen, right? So it's not VMware versus non-VMware, it's everything. So vRealize Operations looks at all the metrics coming together from everything in your environment. So it's truly doing that correlation, that automated correlation by looking at everything. So it's giving you that single tool to work with. These are a short list of the kind of technologies that it would be able to manage and monitor, but you can go to VMware Solution Exchange and get full details on all the different technologies it can monitor. I think it's like 80 to 100 or something. All right, so let's get into what's coming up, right? So we're bringing up vRealize Operations 6.1, which means vSOM 6.1 and vROI 6.1. Key capability I want to talk about there is it's all about intelligent workload management, and it gets enabled in two ways. You got something we are referring to as intelligent workload balancing, right? So what we do is we give you this capacity utilization dashboard, which has a view of your entire environment. I mean, imagine a kind of a three-pillar, three-section vertical column kind of a structure, and it lays out your entire environment in terms of workloads and how they're organized, what's under stress, what's overutilized versus underutilized, and then in the middle is basically that green zone of balance, which is what you want to kind of achieve. So it gives you a good snapshot of how things are. And it gives you something called a balance plan, which gives you guidance on, okay, what do you need to move and where so that you get into a more of a balanced environment situation, right? And it gives you, actionable buttons and all those kind of things to take care of that as well. The other thing also that we've made available, again, this is again in the direction of moving from having to use multiple tools to a single tool. Previously, you had to install an extra component to be able to do things like OS monitoring, and now we've made that available natively in vRealize Operations, so it's just much more streamlined experience. Everything comes together nicely, so you actually have that kind of comprehensive visibility and a single screen to work with, and so from a usage experience perspective, it makes things much easier. So those are some very quick things about what's coming up in 6.1, but there's a ton of sessions this week that you can get into a lot more detail about what is actually involved and all the other kind of non-marquee features that we may have as well. Given I'm a marketing guy, I like pictures. They might not be pretty, but I'll still put them up. So think of this, think of your data center as a library. Things get messy over time. And what we do is we give you that librarian to, or get things organized, put things in the right places, so you are efficient and you're managing an environment better, right? When you think about things like OS monitoring, the analogy that I like to give is you can have a bunch of watches on your wrist. All you will know is time, right? So you can have all these different tools. It's not going to tell you all the right things. So instead, we give you something like that whole Apple Watch thing, where it's monitoring all the right metrics. It's that one solution for you, and at the same time, it is giving you guidance to be able to, it leverages all that monitoring data and gives you the right kind of guidance to take action versus just tell you what's up, what's down, and those kind of things, right? So thank you for humoring me with those pretty picture thingies, but from moving from what the product can do to what the product can do for you, right? A study was done by, I think it was Management Insights, and they discussed, talked, interviewed, surveyed a bunch of our customers, and the kind of numbers they came back with was, if you look at kind of the left column, right column kind of thing, from for the users of the product, I think you'll care more about those things. You have more visibility on your entire environment. You got significant reduction in downtimes, for example. And when you want to make that case to your manager to buy a particular solution, there's things like a bunch of cost reductions. So if you are able to reclaim a bunch of capacity from your existing environment, you don't have to spend on that extra hardware for that new project that's going to come down the line. And so you got significant kind of cost savings. The awesome thing is that what we've seen is within a year, within 12 months, people have seen 2.4x return on investment. So it's basically pays for itself 2 times over within a year. I think the figure is about within 90 days it gives you that 1x ROI already. So you can basically install it, get started with it right up front, day one. It gives you a bunch of recommendations that you can take action on, besides solving the immediate kind of health problems, of course. Going from aggregate numbers to specifics, a few examples of customers. Folks at Cornerstone, which is a home lending company, they were able to look at capacity in a big way after they've added the operations management capabilities. Their hardware cost reduction seemed to be about 70%, which is, of course, significantly more than what we talked about in the previous slides. Things which took 15-20 minutes to solve were able to now be solved within a minute. That is ridiculous. Millennium Pharmacy, they again were able to do a lot more, pack a lot more VMs into their environment, so improve their VM density, which basically meant a bunch of efficiency improvements and cost improvements, and operational costs, of course, went down because of that. And the Waddington Group, these guys were facing a lot of challenge in terms of integrating their backend systems. It was a huge project that they were going through, and it was creating a lot of kind of challenges in the teams. And so I think they had 80% reduction in terms of just time spent in that whole integration, which made the teams work, things go a lot more faster and smoother. Again, consolidation ratio improvements, capacity utilization improvements, etc. So these are kind of the examples of, you've seen some aggregate numbers, you've seen some examples of people like yourselves who are actually making use of the product and getting real value and real benefits out of it. So I would encourage you to make sure that you go try it out if you haven't already. It looks like a bunch of you are already using. I was going to say a bunch of you are users, which might sound weird, but a bunch of you are already using VRealize Operations. So I would encourage those who on an older edition try out 6.1. That's coming up now. Significant improvements. If you're already on 6.0, you will see that, but 6.1 adds on top of that. I think we talked about a couple of things, but one of the things I really like as a marketing guy is that things are a lot prettier now as well. I think reports and all that you generate are just much nicer and easier to share across organization. If you want to share a report with your management chain, it's much easier to just take and export as PDF and print those out versus having to recreate, which is not really pretty in 5x. So at this point in time, I'm going to have Martin come back up and just finish things off here.
Sure. Thank you, Himanshu. So as Himanshu said, this is more of an overview session. There are the week's just barely getting started, and there's a lot more deep dives that will occur throughout the week. We just wanted to highlight 2 of those here. INF5239. This session will basically go over how to manage the health and performance and capacity of your data center using vSphere with Operations Management from a much deeper, more almost like a practitioner type of perspective. And then management, or MGT5245. This is a vRealize Operations Insight, basically just another deep dive from a practitioner's perspective of how to actually utilize this piece of software to get deep insights into your data center. So we covered a lot today. I just wanted to give you some next steps before opening up for question and answers. But basically, if you guys wanted to learn more about taking virtualization to the next level, you can actually get a free ebook on our VMware.com product page. It's VMware.com product/vSphere with Operation Management, or just jot down this URL right here. But basically, there's a free downloadable ebook that will go over Virtualization 2.0 and a lot of the same concepts that we went over today. Furthermore, you can actually try out vSphere with Operations Management for yourself and see how you like it. There's a 60-day free trial that's available also on the VMware.com website. Absolutely free to try. Feel free to kick the tires before you actually use it and make a commitment to it. And then we understand that a lot of folks don't like to actually install a product into their environment to test out. So we also have hands-on labs where you can try out vSphere with Operation Management and specific aspects of it, just to kind of get a feel for it and a taste for what it's like before making making further commitments with the product itself. So with that said, if anyone has any questions, please step up to the mics, and we would love to answer your questions for you. Everyone else, thank you for coming. First question on the right.
Just a real quick question. Earlier in the demo, earlier in the presentation, you were referring to 6.0 update 1.
Yes.
Is that the same as 6.1, or is that coming out before the
So
6.1?
so it's actually two separate products. vSphere with Operations Management 6.1 is actually going to have, as part of it, as a component of it, vSphere 6 update 1. So you can think of vSphere with Operations Management as sort of a bundle of vSphere and vRealize operations. The vSphere part of it will be update 1.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
If you
yes, over here.
if you had vCenter Operations 5.5 or 5.6, do those licenses upgrade to vRealize Operations 6.0, or is it a whole different product at this point?
No. I'm sorry. So if you had vSphere with Operations 5.5, does it upgrade?
I actually think we have 5.6, but it was licensed per VM. It
Yes.
was before y'all rebranded everything to vRealize. Do those carry over, or am I going to have to, or not? I'm just curious if you know
I think,
that.
Of course, for a specific case, just make sure that you work with the
Right.
the VMware salesperson, so you can figure out in terms of what's the right kind of upgrade path. So there is an upgrade path from 5.x to 6.x. There is a stepwise process there from a technology perspective,
Okay.
And from a licensing, because you're talking about per VM. So I'm assuming you have VCOps standalone, not vSOM itself, right? And so then I think there's some sort of conversion that will need to be done from a per VM to a per CPU model, because vSOM here is all about per CPU licensing.
Okay, thank you.
A question over here on the right.
When it comes to vSphere operation and the capacity planning, just like you mentioned, we have a lot of our DBAs and a lot of our users, they request VMs from us at a very large scale, 4 vCPUs, 16 gigs of memory, and we have vSphere Operations Manager running, and when we run a report on overused capacity, it tells us that I can drop this VM down to 1 CPU and 1 meg of memory. So what I'm trying to figure out is, how reliable are those reports in terms of what I can drop down to without because we haven't actioned any of that information, and I'm in a situation where I need to do some stuff, but I need to know if I shrink these VMs, I don't want the user base coming to me, my application's running slow, you took away all my memory, kind of situation.
So the way to answer that question is, and again, I'm the marketing guy, I'm going to
Sure.
give you an answer.
Right.
And then from a specific perspective, I think it would be great if you go down to our booth at, in the Solutions Exchange and talk to our guys over there in engineering and technical marketing. But the answer there is, the tool is there to basically give you the recommendations to make those changes, right, based on the behavior of that VM.
Right.
Now, if you've only had it for a very short while and that VM hasn't gone through that typical cycle, and the example I give you is end of the quarter, the VMs used by the finance team are going to spike up. The rest of the quarter, they're going to be down, right? So if you haven't gone through a quarter kind of timeline, the tool is going to give you recommendations that what, wait for another month and let's see those recommendations again, right? So there's part of it is that, which is why we make sure that you're always having IT in control versus tool going and making some changes, which, because your environment best, but at the same time, the tool is also learning what's going on, figuring out what's the lay of the land in your case, and then giving those recommendations. Now, specifically to your case, I think it would be a good idea to just have a chat with our folks at the booth, and they might be able to dig out something that, that might be useful for you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Hi.
So, with going back to the capacity, like where he was saying, if you have, I saw on one of the slides that there was a thing where you could right-click on a VM recommendations and have it automatically change to what it's recommending from there. I mean, how does that work if, like, the VM is already powered on? Does it need to have all the hot add and hot remove enabled on the VM to be able to change it live?
So I think what it'll do is it'll identify those VMs that are that's sitting and powered off, that have been provisioned, right? I think again, I'm not qualified enough to give you the detailed answer to it, so I would request you to have that, bring this up with our folks at the booth itself, and I'm sure they'll give you an answer that is much more satisfactory.
Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon. My question's on the new vCenter appliance.
Yes.
Is it capable of being linked, so you can have linked vCenters?
Like a link mode?
Yes.
I believe it is, but to verify, please ask the folks at the Solutions Exchange. But I think you can link up vCenter servers, because there's still a limitation. I think the limitation is like you can have 10,000 hosts or something supported with it. If you have environments bigger than that, you would still need to link them up.
Okay. Also, can you have multiple, like can you have a Windows and a appliance and link those two?
Like a mixed environment?
Yeah.
I believe you can.
Okay. Thank you.
We have 6.0 VC Ops in our environment, and it works great, except for sometimes we don't have the analytics learning. We have storage VNX, which auto-tiers the workloads once every week. It's been a couple of months now, and it seems to fire off boot storms for us. So we're like, I'm wondering, is there something amiss there, or is it do I need to give it more time?
So I really like the part when you said we have 6.0 and everything works great. I was like, just stop there, that's it, done.
No, it does. It has saved us a few times, I'll tell you that.
No, but again, I
It's a great
think
product.
to that question, I would again point you to our folks in the Solutions Exchange to give you a really good answer on that one.
Okay. Another one is in the roadmap, we find when we provision the VMs to our database groups and stuff like that, we get capacity alerts where it says 95% disk, it's filling up, do something about it. Is there any future integration with TreeSize, with products like TreeSize, so that gives us file level visibility to the VM, so we can go in and look at the VM rather than going and RDPing into it and then going and making, launching TreeSize and then looking at what's grown in that VM in the past little while?
It looks like a bit of a roadmap kind of question there, so I'm not sure, what we can share there, but
it would be nice if we can have visibility, file level visibility from that pane.
I like the idea, for sure. What I would also suggest is check out the roadmap session that we have on operations management. I forget exactly what the number or timing of it is, but there is a roadmap session, and that could be interesting for you to attend as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, so the management packs we talk about, like, if it's built by VMware, it's free. If it's built by some of our OEM partners, typically it's included when you purchase the technology, and then there's people like Blue Mirror who build these, specialize in building these, and they are available for purchase.
Okay, question on the right. Yep.
Do you know if there's an upgrade path from the Windows-based vCenter to the appliance?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you know if there's an upgrade path from Windows-based vSphere 5.5 to the 6.0
For the virtual appliance?
Yes.
I believe there is, but I don't want to lead you down the wrong path. I think there is. I would just stop in the Solutions Exchange downstairs and just ask the technical marketing team down there. They would certainly know the answer.
Okay. I think historically what I learned was you couldn't bring over your historical information because of the you have a SQL backend, and so schema information going over to, I believe the backend in the appliance is what, PostgreSQL? Postgres SQL.
Yeah.
So I thought there was an issue in there in bringing all the information over and converted into a Postgres. I thought that was so. I don't know whether with update 1 you overcome that hurdle. So just check with solutions. Or
I would advise you check down there. They would certainly know a lot more than I. They have an experts booth down there also, to ask the experts, where they can help you through these situations. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Yes, sessions? Okay.
Any more questions?
By the way, those two sessions, I think all the deep dive stuff is all covered by a colleague, Hisham Murad, who's a just rock star guy. So, if you haven't seen him demo, you should check out that session for sure. Lots of good information.
All right, it doesn't look like there's any more questions. Thank you again for coming out and taking your time to learn about taking virtualization to the next level. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.